Good evening, folks, and thank you for coming. It's really a privilege for me to be here. I've been in this room before. We had a big conversation about the growth in Putaruru. Some faces are recognizable to me. I trust people don't carry grudges and so on, but it's been a while, and so just let go if it is an issue for you. Really good to see several faces that look quite familiar to me, and I was pretty impressed by that evening we had here about growth and just trying to kickstart getting things going and so on. Because I work in a lot of communities around this country, and to have a community, I can immediately see and feel when a community is proactive, when people want to get things done, when you're interested, and it really isn't just about what's in it for me or complaints about council not doing enough and all of that sort of stuff, some of which may be true, but it doesn't actually get you anywhere. And so the attitude that I sensed in that session, which sits very clearly in my mind, was one which I found pretty inspiring, and actually quite a lot of things happened as a result of that, and there's sort of wheels in the motion. So tonight is about the water park, and so this is the way I like doing things. I've learned over time, if you take shortcuts, you very soon have to go back to stage one because things come and bite you, and there's not full ownership in the process, and you've gone a bit fast and so on. So tonight is really about listening, and tonight is about, and there'll be some exchange. I will give some ideas back as part of just sharing, because this is kind of what I do, and so I'd like to share some of those things. In the end, this is about trying to find your aspirations for the water park site at one level, in quite a lot of mundane detail, the sorts of things you think would be great there. At another level, it's about your sort of more almost poetic sort of aspiration. What is the feel, and what is the sort of philosophical thing that sits in your mind that somehow we've got to see whether that can be reflected. So tonight is all about getting your opinion. You will be aware that this is not a new project, and it's featured pretty succinctly and pretty explicitly in this document, and it's Precinct 1, page 19. Sounds like we're in the church. Can you turn to Precinct 1, page 19, please? No, don't. And in there you can see that Precinct 1 is a lot about the water park. So this has been thought about by council. What we're doing today is a continuation of that process. And so this doesn't just come out of the blue. In there is quite explicit mention of Putaruru wanting to strengthen its growing reputation around food and beverage, around some of those specialties, and obviously the clear reputation you already have with Over the Moon, and you've got a bespoke butcher here who does some pretty cool stuff, and you've got other things in the mix. And so that there's been for a while, and most of you are probably aware, some thinking about how can, to some degree, the water park sort of play a role in that focus. Not exclusively for that, but can it play a role in that focus? So we are sitting within I think an established framework of thinking, and that's what we are kicking off with. So, can everybody see? Can you see? And so, don't try and make sense of this, but it's just an aerial photograph just of Putaruru, and I think the thinking for me is if we, and you're going to see a better picture in a moment of here, but the only reason for this is it's actually about the whole town. and it serves the whole town in one way or another. It's not your neighborhood park, but it will be, it in a way will define you because it's so central to your whole community. And so its identity is really important, I think. Secondly, this kind of just starts alluding to if we do want things to happen there, we should give some early messages on the approach. So it's just about if we're going to do something and we're proud of it and we sort of want to entice people to stop and participate, we're going to have to give some messages out there because, as you know, with travel, next minute they go through to Tirau and you don't want that. That's a joke. And then the next slide is just a little bit closer in. I'm just a bit nervous, you folks seeing. And then this one, again, is just a bit closer in. And we're starting to see the roundabout, and we're starting to see the old post office, which was, I'm sort of originally an architect. I'm a lapsed architect, like a lapsed Catholic. But I can tell you, the first time I saw this building, I just did a handbrake turn, and I just had to understand what is it, from outer space. It's a pretty cool building. For some of you may have sort of become used to it, but it's actually a really cool building, so that's a wonderful backdrop to work against. And if we then zoom in a bit, there's nothing, you're not going to learn anything from this. These are just sort of contextual photographs of what's out there. But let me pay respects to what's out there. It was pretty, I'm sure it was pretty cool in its day. And I'm sure it has really served the community well over time. I think what I'm hearing fairly extensively is that it's tired, it needs refreshing, it needs updating, but its essence actually, is that there's something there that I can well imagine has meant quite a lot to a lot of people. And when you go around it, there are all sorts of bits that I think we've got to be careful about just discarding too casually. And little bits in there that I think have meaning, and they're meaning for people in the community and so on. But what it does very poorly is announce itself. This out here says Putaruru Water Park in the shade. I can't even read it from here. It is really, very, very, very poorly signposted in that sense. So we've got to ask, can we do better than that? Some of these trees have been, we've had some council people out looking at it with us, and it's just an opinion, not a rule, but the thought that these two trees may be worthwhile keeping and not just not necessarily just taking away. Not the cabbage trees so much, but the other two. Somebody needs to help me with what they are. Okay. So you can have a comment on that and give us your view on that. But if they don't hurt the design, do we keep them, don't we? So that's a conversation piece. Clearly there is the issue of how we connect across the State Highway and across Kensington itself, and specifically we'll get to just the Honda site and it may have a different future, and so we got to think about that connection. When you go around the detail, it's a bit hard to see, but there's somebody there. I've on a few occasions come across people just mucking around, just not very productively. But there are people there. There's bits of enjoyment. This morning when I went, there was somebody obviously traveling somewhere, and got a guy to come and take a photograph of her with the stuff in the background. So I don't know whether she was going to go back and praise you or or laugh about it, but I suspect she actually found it quite cool and wanted this picture. Not sure where she's from, and she looked a little bit old to be traveling, because she clearly was traveling, and so she might have been just having another OE to get over things and then get back to her life. But you know, there was a bit of appreciation and so on. So there's a lot happening there, almost too much, but there's a lot happening there. And so this was sort of important, I think, this connectivity and through to the Honda building. And of course, Over the Moon is next door, and the desire to connect things up. You're blessed with a pedestrian crossing. These things are quite hard to achieve. NZTA, you go through a whole process.
Very dangerous.
And it's dangerous because of
trees there blocking the traffic, the flow of the traffic coming through.
That's fantastic information, and we'll get that down on your plans. That's the sort of thing we want to hear, because those sight lines are important. And so we've got to think a little bit about, you know, can we strengthen this, make it safer, and are there maybe, you know, maybe we can get it widened if we think that's worth it to help make that connection stronger.
Opposite Graham.
Okay, let's not solve it right now, because we're going to have the conversation. The
council has approached NZTA
yeah.
to get it moved to roughly where the supermarket is.
Okay, further.
NZTA are not adverse to that idea.
Okay, so, but let's not debate it now, because there'll be pros and cons on that, and so we'll bring that through in the design. You have got a lot of interpretation on there. There's a lot of wording telling us things. I find those fascinating, and I've gone back and taken close-up photographs so we can capture the text. And I think we've got to be careful about discarding any of this. We want to have a really good look at it, and we should build up the storyline that needs to be told in this place and add to it. But you know, let's pay some respect to things that have been said, and there's quite a bit of that I actually find quite interesting. We may put it together in a different way. It may be freshened up, maybe a bit more exciting in how you interpret it, and later we can talk about how that may work. This is super cool. I sort of was hoping to hang around till, because I'm leaving after this, which will be quite late. You know, maybe if one can, with a few, if I can remove it, it's the sort of thing I'd love to take home and put on my deck. I think we got to find a place for this. It just is just actually, I don't know, I just find it fabulous. But I'll let you have an opinion on it, and maybe we put it in a different setting, because I just think there's so much care taken. And just a robust sort of messaging, for me, just feels like something worth keeping in the mix. And of course, the old post office, and you know, and things happening there. There'll be ongoing conversations about how can this respond maybe better to the outside. Can uses, you know, what happens to those uses over time? I think if we create a better setting, you may get some incentive in terms of some of these, you know, and they're fine and they're serving a good purpose, but you may get some other levels of offer occurring if the setting changes and you get more people coming there. And so that's going to be, I think, an ongoing conversation. But we've got to work as though it is as it currently is, and then we've got to try and see if we can get better integration into the future. And I think a particularly interesting thing is this area on the left of where you go in, because it's the one area that does front onto the water park. You know, is there some potential external area? Can you get some outdoor seating? Now the building is, I believe, locally listed. And so if you gave cover here, you'd have to just pay careful attention that you do it with sympathy to the building and as a subset of the bigger structure. But we're sort of interested in that, hence the internal photograph as well, to kind of show that relationship.
Can I suggest that PiP very difficult on T-Row Street. There needs to be a good sign saying free parking up Kensington Street,
Yeah.
and then behind.
So we're going to let you say these things. You're going to write down your ideas on in about 4 minutes' time, and your group will give you the pens first, and you can write your things there first. And you're allowed to use capital letters if you feel strongly about it. But thank you. We'll give you. We're going to capture these things. Very good thinking. And so, diving into the context, so you can see an aerial photograph here. This tree is no longer with us, and so we made a little mistake by putting a circle on that map on the table. And this is an aerial of the Honda building and the outdoor space and the wonderful potential ultimately for it to have a relationship to the water park on this side across Tirau Street. And then if we zoom in.
With the Honda shop, people might not be aware that the Swifter bought it on behalf of the Tirau people. So that is going to be part of the Arctic people. So some thoughts about that as well, but it's part of the business.
Yeah.
It's going to be artisan food in this.
Oh,
So, yes. Great. Thanks for that, Stu. And so I'm just quickly taking you through. This is just a drawing of what's currently there. It's a bit academic, but we just wanted to show you the layer. And then we're going to have a plan, which is the plan on your table. So this is what we'd like to ask you to do, please. For the next 40 minutes or so, we ask you to work in groups and have a go at the following questions, topics. We've got these topics. I'll hand out a little sheet for you. And the first topic, which was not written on the sheets, but is just want you to think for 5 or 10 minutes on the role of this place. Not kind of what it looks like, what you can do there so much. Yes, it's all those things, but what is its role? Is it a neighborhood park? Is it a town square, effectively? Is it about it's how you explain yourself to visitors and to the outside world? So just give a little bit of thought about the role. There's often a danger in work like this that one dives in and solves a little detail here, and you knock out a tree there and you do this and that, but you've not kind of thought about the bigger purpose. So if you can just spend 5 minutes on that, and I haven't written that down in the handout, but I have written the following ones down, and there are 4 topic areas that we want you to you just write down the heading, and then you give us your ideas, and these are they, and then I'll come and hand the sheets out to you. So the first one are the activities. What can you do there, or what do you want people to be able to do there? Play, outdoor seating, markets. Activation is really activities of sometimes spontaneous, sometimes organized, or sound, or making music, and so on. So we would like your thoughts of what you think is appropriate, and if you've got any brand new ideas, you have to keep them seamly. If you really are intent on something, you can write a private note and just give it to me, but that sounds sleazy. But what are the activities that you think this place should accommodate? And so that is the first one. The second one is, how will you experience it? And that's actually better explained by saying, what will it look like? What will it feel like? What will it smell like? And there could also be sound, and so I forgot to put in there, but what sound could emanate from it? And there are some really interesting little things that are happening in public spaces around the world. So that's the second one. I just call it character, but how will you experience it? Third one is identity. So what are the messages that it's giving visitors? Yourself, often your kids, often yourselves and new residents, but certainly visitors. What are the things that it should be telling people about your community? We've got a whole lot of things there already. We'll harvest those, we'll bank them, but are there other things? And just be explicit, please, because that's gold for us when there's interesting nuggets of information or things that have happened here or attributes about this place. Are they historic? Should it be saying things about the future? You know, you're actually quite forward. You don't think so, but you're actually quite forward-looking. In terms of how progressive you are about, you know, wanting to move on and shape things for yourselves, just that spirit that I'm detecting. Are you going to talk about things about water? Things have been said. Are there other interesting facts that we could try and weave in about your timber, about mana whenua? And so which are the messages that you think we should try and capture so that we can try and put it in a brief so that when this thing happens?
I would like to share a little bit of information. You asked before about a couple of trees in the park, and mana whenua is mentioned there. One of my Maori friends told me that the tikopi is seen as the chief tree where in the past the chiefs would gather.
Okay, well that's fantastic. Can you write that down, please, and just make sure that that's captured, because that's how I'm going to bring this forward. But you know, that could be really cool, and I think we definitely need some very explicit iwi commentary back on things and further ideas, but commentary on, you know, on what we're doing here. And so we'll find a way of that being incorporated. And then just making sure I got it. Yep. And then the last column that I have here is just the physical thing, the elements. That's cover. And so a thought was brought up earlier about how does this work seasonally? You know, winter or rain versus dry. There's never no rain, I've learned. But seasonally, how do we, you know, what? Just think about both seasons. Think about nighttime. And so that certainly brings up lighting, but it could also be exciting lighting. There's lighting to do with safety. You just feel safe there. But there's also lighting relative to being, you know, making for an interesting place. Landscape, and also, you know, just a little bit of biodiversity, but also is it native planting? What are those messages that you want to give? There's some there is power there already, and there's a manhole cover and some electricity at the back end, sort of in one corner, and the potential to get sound wired there, so that can be part of it. And then I think there are just two sort of more general things, just how you feel about sustainability relative to embedded energy, reuse of some of the material that's there. You know, is that something, is that a conversation? Because if you do that and we explain that and that becomes transparent, you're actually giving out messages to other people. And you know, you're not going to go to heaven just on the basis of having done that. You probably have to do quite a lot more to get to heaven. But it's worthwhile from a educational perspective, and for kids and others, just to kind of get that narrative in there. He didn't like me talking about heaven. Okay, enough of that. So I do ask you, spend 5 minutes on this and then go through these topics, and I'm going to hand out one of these each. They're sort of 1 or 2 rules. One is, please give everybody a chance to say their say. Secondly, doesn't matter if you disagree, write both points down. Just doesn't matter. We're just trying to get a full array of ideas.